What up, what up, what up? Welcome back to another edition of Green with Envy here in the 617 podcast, proudly brought to you by Crowworthy. As always, this is your boy Will Weir checking in. How you doing? How you living? Joining me as he does each and every time, best friend, co-host, and the coach of our podcast, the one and only Greg Menakis. What up, man?
What's good, brother? Feeling good. We have a great guest on today. I'm really excited about it. I'm watching his reaction as he sees the ticker going on the bottom.
I know.
Official now, Mark. Huh?
Seeing this man's beautiful face down here made me a little nervous for the opening. So let's just go ahead and bring him in here. We got one of our collective best friends. He's a behind-the-scenes meme master, and he's the author of the new critically acclaimed self-help book, I Felt a Funeral. It's the one and only Mark McDonough. What's up, man? Welcome back.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me. Usually when you have me on, it's for absolutely no reason. So I'm glad that there's a reason I'm here this time.
We have a distinct purpose for having you on today. It's not just, hey, we don't have anything to talk about. Mark, do you want to come on and entertain the people? There's actually something we're going to talk about. It's your new book, I Felt the Funeral. Not actually a self-help book, but that's a joke I've been marinating for a couple of weeks since I knew that we were going to have you coming on. I thought you might like it. So we're going to get to that in a minute. But one of the things that's really unique, about our podcast and about our friendship with Mark is that all of us grew up in Dorchester. Probably like you could do a relay race with a baseball and connect all of our houses together. Like that's how close we are together in the neighborhood and where we grew up. But as you all know, Greg and I live in Austin, Texas. Mark, if you've been listening to us for a little bit, he's joined before. He's out in London, England. So Mark, let's talk a little Celtics first. Where are you at with this season? We want you to kind of flip this with us right now. Tell us a little bit about what the season looks like from your perspective, being across the pond, and kind of where you're at for where this team's at right now.
Yeah, so I'm not able to watch every game because I have a job, and most games are on a late night. So I think for the most part, unfortunately, the takes that make their way to me are like the worst ones, and the ones that you just can't get rid of. So it was all doom and gloom for a while there. I think maybe that's disappearing a little bit with the win streak. But I still get texts from guys like, Tatum only scored 19 tonight. It's like, well, we won by 45 points. It's like, why does it matter what Tatum scored? So I think, like, you guys know how the Boston media is, but I think it's like trickle down from there. And then, so like when it gets filtered all the way to me, it's like it's all just negativity, I guess.
And how you feeling about this like Derek White trade right now? That's something that I think a lot of people, especially on Twitter, and then even just like casual to legit Celtics fans, were a little confused about why we would give up what we gave up to get Derek White. What was the initial reaction that you saw and that you felt when you saw that trade?
So my first point of reference for everything is usually 2K. And Derek White's not my favorite player to use in 2K, so I was like, I got to see what this guy can do in actually real life. But the immediate thing people were saying is that he's like a great defender, like great basketball player in terms of just like being a point guard or being a guard. So it seems like he's going to fit in actually perfectly in Boston because I think the fan base, they like gritty guys. And he seems like a gritty guy. I know you were like questioning a little bit, Greg. I saw you tweet that you weren't that sure of him either. What did you think about the first game?
I thought he was awesome, man. Like that. The reason why I say I'm not really sure about him is that like I felt like we needed to get someone that was slightly more obviously talented than him. I think a lot of his talents are very subtle. Like he doesn't make a lot of mistakes. He's like a really good offensive lineman, right? Like if you hear the offensive lineman's name during a game, that means they're doing something wrong. Like that's kind of how I feel about Derek White on the basketball court. He's just like always making the right play. And in the first game against the Nuggets, I thought he was like probably our most high IQ player on the court. He was making these great reads, just like very simple plays, just knowing when to make a quick pass and when to hold it an extra second so a guy could open up a lane or looking the defender off so that somebody could cut into some open space. And then he was just like, his shot looked great. I know that was something that a lot of people were scared about. Will and I talked about this after the trade. I was like, yeah, his numbers are very similar to Josh Richardson. His numbers are very similar to Marcus Smart. But when you watch him shoot the ball, he actually shoots the ball way more smooth than the two of them. And I think that kind of held true in the first game. His shot looked like butter, man, in that first game. And he he looks like he's going to be a great addition. Will, what are your thoughts on White so far in that first performance?
I mean, everything I read about him after the trade, because it's funny. I talked about this on the last podcast with Adam Taylor when we did the live stream in the trade deadline. Living in Austin, Texas, the hardest team to watch is the San Antonio Spurs because of the NBA's stupid ass blackout rules. So anytime I actually want to go check them out, because I haven't had cable in years, I'll go to put on a Spurs game, and that's literally the one game that I cannot watch. So I've seen very little of Derek White other than highlights, and so a lot of the reading I did, and knowing a little bit about him, everyone talked about him being very much like the stereotypical Spurs guy, all about the team, all about, ball movement, that, 0.5 seconds or less, got to make a decision. And that's really what it was. He was like he looked like if that's what we're going to get going forward, he's the perfect glue guy to connect a lot of the things that are happening on the court. And to your point, Greg, you were saying that he does a little bit of the unheralded things. Made me think of when Al Horford first came to Boston and everyone was like, where's the 20 and 10s? Where's the poster dunks? And, meanwhile, you and I are in Austin, Texas, and we're like, did you see that screen he set? Did you see how he got Isaiah Thomas open, or how he rolled, had like a short roll and then hit somebody else on the wing or kept the ball moving for a hockey assist? And I think Derek White's going to do a bunch of those little things. And then if that shot, which I think is still obviously the biggest key, we talk about that all the time, this team looking for shooting. If that shot gets back to where he can be about mid-30s, and I think maybe it was Adam or talked about this a little bit too, like, Josh Richardson this year having a career year shooting. Typically, he's about 35%. Derek White, typically about 35%. This year is about 31%. So really, you're just cutting the difference of where you think that, where it's going to be that typical shooting range and then what else they can do. And I think Derek White might bring a little bit more than Josh Richardson, and maybe a little bit more consistently. We'll have to see. Time will tell. But initial feedback was really good on that. Mark, I'm curious to know, like, do you find NBA fandom around London? Like if you're out at a bar, like, and it is a time where maybe there's a Celtics game on, like today, as we're recording before the Hawks game. So we will have some of that reaction for you later in the week. But if there's a game like that's going on at a reasonable time, like, are people actually asking to watch basketball? What is the basketball fandom in London like, or in England?
So I think because I'm from Boston, if somebody is a basketball fan, they give me that information pretty quickly. It's like their point of reference. So it's just like, oh, the Celtics. Like, so it's not like somebody can really hide their fandom because we're not going to have anything else to talk about. But in terms of like games being on at bars and stuff, it's basically non-existent. I don't know what it's going to be like for playoffs and stuff. I mean, last year it was COVID. So, I mean, last 2 years really. So I haven't got to experience, like, let's say, the games that matter. But in terms of regular season, you're not going to find it.
Yeah, and today you actually have an opportunity if you have the time to watch the Celtics, because they're playing the Atlanta Hawks 2 o'clock Central Time, 3 o'clock Eastern Time, which would be what, like 9 o'clock for you?
7 o'clock. But
that's not that bad.
Yeah, it's the game everybody's most excited about today.
Yeah, exactly. And like in this game against the Hawks, we let people know that we're recording before this game, so something crazy could happen in the game, and we won't have anything for you. But I'm really looking forward to this game against the Hawks, because the Celtics really need to continue to distance themselves from the Atlanta Hawks and from everybody else that's now behind them in the playoff race. We're currently sitting in the 7th seed. And I think we're actually tied percentage-wise with the Toronto Raptors, who lost
slightly behind. If we win, we'll jump slightly ahead.
Yep. So I think they have like one less loss than us, but like also one less win. But we look great, man, and I'm super excited about what the Celtics might be able to accomplish in these last 3 games before the All-Star break. And I think that with Kevin Durant being out and everybody else and like that's kind of behind us struggling right now, I think the Celtics really have a good opportunity to make their way out of the play-in tournament and into the top 6. Will, what are your thoughts on the Celtics heading into the All-Star break right now?
Well, I mean, considering where we've been and how you and I have been on, like going off the edge watch pretty much like all season, riding back and forth that wave. I got to feel pretty good. We got 2 games left, and obviously you want to go out on a high note, and they're 2 pretty important games. Got the Hawks, got the Sixers coming up on Tuesday. So those are 2 games that could really propel you into that I want to say second half, but really we're 2/3 of the way through the season when the All-Star break's coming up. So for that final stretch. So, I think we're in a pretty good position right now. The East is just insane between injuries and between, the competitiveness. And, right now, like to your point of being on the fringe of getting out of that play-in, which a couple of weeks ago felt like there was zero chance of that happening. That in itself is a miracle. But at the same time, you can't be complacent with just getting to that 7 and 6. You got to try to look a little bit further down the road, because right now, if things just, for whatever reason, season just stopped and, the Nets ended up being healthy, Ben Simmons and Kevin Durant are coming back for a play-in game. You don't want any part of that. And so you want to put it, to your point, as much distance as you can from those teams below you. So, I feel good about where the team is trending. I think obviously with the shakeups here, bringing back Daniel Tice, bringing in Derek White, there's a lot that still needs to be seen, but everything's trending in the right direction. So it's hard not to feel positive about this team and going into the All-Star break. So excited for the second half, but I think there's still a lot up for grabs in the Eastern Conference. And, while it feels like right now we're trending towards getting out of that play-in, there's still a lot that can happen. Other teams behind us are going to start to get healthier. And so they're going to have to keep fighting to find their way outside of that play-in.
Does the loss to the Sixers worry you, or it's regular season, so it don't matter?
I think it'd probably depend on two things. Number one, if James Harden's playing or not. I think that makes a difference in how I feel. And, they were joking about, I don't know if you guys saw on the TNT, like they were picking the All-Star team, and LeBron was like, oh yeah, I guess I'll take James. Like, is he even going to play? How's his hamstrings? And Charles Barkley was like, he got traded. He's healthy. And so then they all started like cracking up. So, we'll see if James Harden comes back and it's closer to the James Harden that was, a year ago or so before injuries. But it's funny because a lot of Celtics Twitter is always like, give us the Sixers, we have the Sixers numbers. I'm like, bro, you motherfuckers do not understand who Joel Embiid is, do you? Like, this dude is a fucking problem. Like, if he has even a little bit of help, that team terrifies me. So Joel Embiid, I just think, has the ability to dominate. Like, I think the way that we can match up our front court with him is one of the better matchups. And we're not stopping him. No one's stopping Joel Embiid. Like, it's all about how you can slow him down. I think our front court has a decent mix of guys that can at least try to do that. So it wouldn't alarm me, but I think the way it happens, if we just get smoked, that would be concerning. But I think it all depends on the context of it. What about you, Greg?
Yeah, I ended up watching the Cavs game against the Sixers last night, and I was really interested in watching that because it's Jared Allen and Evan Mobley, and they've been, a problem for every other team. And Joel Embiid fucking dominated.
Yo, that dunk he had on Jared Allen after the missed free throw,
ridiculous.
God.
I mean, he had a triple-double. He had 40 points. He was moving like a guard. Like, Embiid's always had good footwork, but it's always been more good footwork out of the post. Like, he was dribbling the ball up the court and like making moves in transition, and his handle looked on par with a lot of wings in the league, which is terrifying. His shot looked great. I think he was 4 for 5 from 3 last night. He's hitting all of his free throws. He's dominating on the defensive end. There were a couple times Jared Allen got him, which I was surprised. Jared Allen looked really good, but Embiid I would say 98% of the game completely dominated him. And then when you add Tybal on the defensive end and what he could cause problems, guarding Jaylen Brown or guarding Jason Tatum and taking them out of the game, I think he has that elite defensive potential. The one guy that gives me hope on that team, obviously, is Tobias Harris, because he's in their rotation, and Tobias Harris fucking sucks. So, like, if he's in the game, I think we can take advantage of him. But James Harden, so when I was watching the game last night, what really stood out to me, I think in general, Doc Rivers teams kind of have a reputation for playing very slow, methodical basketball. Think back to this our favorite Celtics team, 07-08, and it was very methodical, right? We were running a lot of half-court sets. Rondo set up the offense, good ball movement, but we didn't get up and down the court. The Sixers were pushing the ball last night, which was really impressive to me. Tyrese Maxey is shot out of a cannon anytime he touches the ball. He's really good. Tybal just plays at breakneck speed the whole game. And then Embiid, like I said, he wasn't lumbering. He was flying up and down the court, and he didn't look tired. So the Sixers, to your question, Mark, they terrify me straight up. But you add James Harden to that, I think he's going to slow their pace down, which might not help the rest of the guys, but might be better for their team in a 7-game playoff series where things just naturally slow down. So depending on the health of his hamstrings, and what I saw from Embiid last night, I just don't see really anybody being able to stop Embiid, let alone the Celtics. Because if Jared Allen and Evan Mobley have no shot, I don't know that Robert Williams and Al Horford have a shot at stopping him. But I'm interested in watching that game on Tuesday or Wednesday, whenever that is. So I think it's going to be a good measuring stick for the Celtics. I expect them to win against the Hawks today, but who knows? John Collins is out in that game. He gave us a lot of problems in the last matchup. So I expect them to go into the Sixers game on an 8-game win streak, and then we'll see what happens.
Yeah, so tune back into that. We'll keep you guys posted. Maybe we'll do a post-game live after Tuesday. If not, we'll give you a full kind of like breakdown leading up to the All-Star break next weekend. So we'll be back for that. But let's get into this book, Mark. So you wrote a fucking book. You wrote a book called I Felt a Funeral. Tell us about how that came to be, when you started writing it, what that process is like, and yeah, just get into it for us.
Yeah, I think I've always wanted to try to write something long form, but it just seemed like such a daunting task, which it is. I'll tell you, it's not. It takes a lot of time, but I just had no like blueprint of how to do it. I didn't go to school to be a writer. I was actually not great in English class. I'm still really bad with grammar. If you see my first draft of anything, I don't even know like where to put quotation marks in.
Well, hey Mark, don't worry. Greg was giving out free grammar lessons on Twitter since we built up a new following with all of these great guests. I'm sure the hot material they were looking for was Greg's 3-threaded tweet of grammar.
Bro, okay, so let me just jump in on that real quick. There's just like I fucking hate when people don't know the difference between there and two and two. It's like what the fuck? You learned that in fucking third grade. Like, and I would say 90% of my Twitter like feed is people who don't know how to use there versus there and two versus two. And it's really frustrating because we know that I teach English. Like, it's my full-time job. So when I see that happening and I'm like, oh my God, dude, like I had a lot of respect for you. And now you don't know the difference between there and there. Like, I guarantee I helped a lot of people today with those two tweets.
It'd be so funny if you got like thousands of new followers and they were all English teachers.
Yeah, I mean that's the content that everyone's here for, right? It frustrates me though, man. Like I almost never tweet, so you can tell when it's like my tweets from our account. Like Will handles 95% of the tweets from our account. And those 5%, I'm just like either arguing with people or I'm just like posting random fucking shit, and it's great. I love it.
I saw you forgot the name for ham the other day.
Yeah, so that's weird, man. Like I was fucking sitting there. I'm eating lunch. So every day at lunch, I get school cafeteria food because it's fucking awesome. And like Debbie and my girl Geraldine, they hook it up. Like it was their birthday the other day. They have the same birthday, really weird. But they love me. They love me. And I think it's just because I know their names. Like not a lot of people just like take the time to learn people's names, you know? And like from their first day, I made it a point to learn their name. So anyways, they hooked me up with a shit ton of food. And at lunch, I'm sitting there and I'm eating these beans, and in the beans, there's ham. And I'm looking at it and I'm like, what is this meat? I know this meat. It's like very obviously ham. And for 5 minutes, I'm staring at my plate and I'm like, I can't remember the name for this meat. I'm like fucking looking it up. I'm like, I'm on Google. Like, what is a meat that people put?
Wait, I have a question. Was the taste of it not like help? Because I mean, honestly, I've had school cafeteria. It's been a while, but like things can look one way and taste another way. Like that's fully possible. So was the taste not like giving you a hint of ham?
No. It was like very clearly ham. And like, you know how when you have ham for like Easter or something like that, and it's those big fucking slabs of ham.
The best type of ham, holiday ham.
That was holiday ham. That was the ham. It wasn't even like little bits of ham. It was like a large slab of ham. And then after about 5 minutes, I'm like, oh, it's fucking ham. And I tweeted about it.
I'm sorry, I shouldn't have brought that up.
So Mark, you wrote a book. But you didn't go to school for books. This is where I think we left off. You didn't go to school for book writing, but you wrote one anyway.
I didn't major in novels. But no. And then my girlfriend got me Stephen King's On Writing for Christmas 2 Christmases ago, and it's basically what I was looking for. I mean, I had read his fiction books before, a lot of them. I love Stephen King, but I had never read On Writing, which is like the first half is kind of a biography, but the second half is literally just like a layman's manual on how to write. And he like gives you like rules, like parameters on how to do it. The two biggest, I don't want to put anybody to sleep, but the two biggest takeaways I got where he says basically plainly, like, I can't make you a great writer. He's like, if you're not naturally like a good writer, I can't make you a great one. He's like, but I may be able to just like make you a working writer. So I thought that was like a realistic goal. Like, maybe you're not going to be Hemingway, but you can write books. Like, not everybody has to be the best writer. So I thought that it made it realistic for me. And then the second biggest thing is he has like two main rules. Like, grammar and stuff isn't as important. Like, the two like main rules he gives you is you have to read a lot, like other people's works. Like, you always have to be reading. It gives you like the rhythm that books go at. And it also shows you what has and hasn't been done before. You don't want to write a book that already exists, basically. So like, read as much as you can, almost like it's like a homework assignment. So I've just been reading like a ton every day. And also you have to write a certain amount of words each day. So he tells you to start off writing 1,000 words each day. And he says eventually you should go up to 2,000. Now I'm still stuck on 1,000. I find it some days it's very easy, sometimes very hard, but you have to do it like you're going to the gym. It's just like any other muscle. Like, you have to do it every single day. If you miss a day, I've tried going to the gym before. You're like, oh, I'll go tomorrow, right? And then you don't go tomorrow. And then you look at the calendar and you haven't been in 3 weeks. The same thing can happen with writing. So you have to like literally be like, I have to set other things aside and I have to write 1,000 words today. So I did that. So I just wrote 1,000 words of the book every single day. If you do that for 90 days, that's 90,000 words, right? So that's only 3 months you can have a book completed in. Now you have to go back and edit it and things like that. You might want to remove whole characters, whole portions of it. But if you write 1,000 words a day, you'll be done in 3 months. That also seems something in my head that I could wrap my head around, right? Like, this is a realistic goal. And so I literally just did that.
Dude, well, we're proud of you, man. I wanted to read the like kind of summary that you put on Amazon for the book, and then I'm going to kick it to Will for something. So you wrote, for I Felt a Funeral, you describe it as Boston police officer Matthew Innes is trying to track down his fiancée. The only problem is that he doesn't remember who she is. After getting struck in the head with the baseball at Fenway Park, he can recall every single detail of his life, except her. He and his best friend and fellow officer Rich go on a blood-soaked and beer-drenched journey to uncover the past, even though they might not like what they find. So, Will, this is the first book you've read in 20 years. What were your thoughts?
First fictional book. Let's just make sure we get that correct. My running joke is that I always read. Typically, it's 2 to 3 books a year, 70% of the way. And like, it would typically be like two sports books, and then for a while I was pretending like I actually cared about my like sales career, and so I'd read like a self-help sales book, partially. But no, back to your original question. I really enjoyed this book. I mean, I think obviously, one of our best friends writing the book certainly helps, but the context in which the book takes place, there was so many relatable parts to me. And I think one of the interesting parts I want to ask you about in a minute is, and I think you wrote this towards the beginning, is that while these characters are centralized in a neighborhood in which we grew up in, within Dorchester, where, there's references to Ventura Park and St. Anne's and St. Brendan's and, the tire swing underneath the river, like that. I had such vivid memories of being high underneath the river and being like, I'm terrified of heights. I want no one to try and peer pressure me into like getting on that rope. That just like, that's all I could think about.
I never got on
one
rope.
of those scenes.
I never got on the rope.
No, absolutely not. It was never. It seemed like a terrible idea. And I think even in the book you mentioned there's one time one of the characters had done it and the river wasn't full enough. He like broke his ankle because he drowned. That's my exact thought that would happen, every single time. So, with that, I thought the interesting part was that to your point, like, of course, for someone like me, it's going to relate and stick, pretty easily. But kind of the point is that like where you grew up and where we grew up collectively, the versions of the characters in this story exist in some way, shape, or form everywhere. Yeah. And they may take on a slightly different role. There may be slightly different, scenarios. Like obviously some of these are, either exaggerated or, are just intense. Like Trip to Amherst is fucking crazy. And so, there's not going to be one for one comparisons, but I think they exist everywhere. And so I thought it was interesting, especially where we talk about the top 3 of us all live thousands of miles away from Boston. And so even being able to take what I was reading and think about how that translates to, my friend circle, my family circle out where I live, as well as stories that they've shared with me and like friends, or when I tell them a story of, hey, I remember this one time in college, we had this happen. And then they have kind of like a counterpoint, but they went to school in South Carolina. And so it made me think of the way that was all connected. And so, for me, it was an easy read because of I enjoy your writing. I enjoy your humor that you put into it. So I got to say, it's the best fictional book I've read in 20 years.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it.
So
Mark,
real quick. I was wondering, man, do you think, because you live in London now and you wrote this book while living in London, do you think you could have written this book if you never moved?
No, absolutely not. I don't want to sound like a pretentious fucking dickhead, but I needed to be removed from Boston in order to, I think, accurately depict it. Because you guys have been there. It's I love Boston, as you can tell by the book, but it's people there are insane. And if you're surrounded by them every day, it's hard to like grasp, I think, how crazy they are. And I say this, of course, like I just mentioned, with a lot of love. But yeah, I needed to be away from it to see it, I think, the whole picture of it.
What was while you were writing this, this is kind of a two-pronged question. What was the most fun part of this book to write? And then number two, what was the most challenging?
So the funnest part was if you read the book, there's a character called Monkey Bite, which I
love Monkey Bite.
So he was extremely fun to write. In some ways, he's comedic relief. In some ways, he's actually kind of a tragic character. But like anytime I knew I was about to write something for him, it came so easy. So I think because he's a like almost a clown type character, I was able to make him less realistic, I believe, than the rest of the story. So that was a lot of fun. The most challenging part is like just connecting everything, because it's almost a detective story. My goal was to make a detective story with no like really low stakes in terms of the worlds, because everything right now is like adventures and stuff. Like the world is in constant peril, right? Like everything on TV, like there's a bomb like that's going to destroy an entire city. I wanted to make a story where they had to like solve something where the stakes for everybody else are the lowest possible. Nobody else cares, but the stakes for him personally are extremely high. But in order to make it like a coherent detective story, everything has to relate. And sometimes I just I'd be like, this doesn't make any sense. Like why are they there? How does this make? So tying all that together was really hard.
Yeah, I was really impressed with like your plotting in the book. Like that one incident, I forget which character it is, but somebody is like on a train and they end up like taking a picture with like it, and then they end up seeing it on social media later that day. And I was like, oh, that was fucking cool, man. Like I did not see that happening. And there were a lot of moments throughout the story where I was just impressed with your ability to kind of like weave everything together into this beautiful tapestry, this disgustingly beautiful tapestry, because the story is like fucking wild. But going off of what Will said, he said like the most challenging part and the most fun part. So you've had what? 10,000 people read your book now, Mark. Like of all the people that have reached out to you, what has been your favorite feedback and what has been your most surprising feedback?
I think my favorite is Will mentioned that it's about Boston, which it very much is, but obviously I didn't want to make a book that only people from Boston could read. So before I released it, I had two people not from Boston. One was a woman from upstate New York, and one was a guy from like the countryside in France. So, I mean, New York is close to Boston, but it isn't Boston. And the countrysides in France is certainly not Boston. And both of them seem to really like it. And they could see shades of people they know in the book, even though the book isn't about where they're from. So I think for me, that's great, because that means I'm touching at, like, I'm making human characters rather than just like Boston caricatures. Sorry, what was the second part of the question?
Your most surprising feedback.
I don't know. So my parents read it. And the main character's father is, of course, has similarities to my own father. I don't think I realized like how many until he had read it though. And then it kind of he liked it, but I almost feel like awkward now because he's very much like there's parts of him that are very much in the book, and I don't think I considered that fully before I wrote it.
Yeah, like one of those things that just like slips into your subconscious as you're writing, and you're aware of it to a certain degree. And so you're like, well, it's partially, but not quite. And then there's little things that only you would know, because you've had this
and only he would know, right?
Exactly, exactly.
So like, there's a scene where I forgot this was in the book, and he hasn't mentioned it, but I know he's read it, and like I thought about it awkwardly now, like afterwards. But there's like a very like I want to say like personal scene in the book where the father wants to hit the son but can't. Like he wants to punish him, but he can't, and that's like, I mean, that's hitting really close to home. And like, I don't know, it's a little awkward having that on paper and knowing that he's read it.
So, which characters would you say like? Do you see yourself in the most?
The like certain parts of the biography of the main character, like the street he grew up on, like certain things that he's done are me, but then in a lot of ways he's very, very unlike me. I thought I found it easier to this is going to sound extremely weird. I found it sometimes easier to express myself in like some of the female characters in the book. Maybe because on the surface, it's not as traceable back to me. So like some of their mindset and some of their memories, some of their perspective on things, I think is more akin to how I think than the male characters.
What's the genre that you would consider? Because I thought about this as I was reading, and then at the end, like I even like that's like the biggest thing of prep work that I did was after I finished this was like, all right, how am I going? Because that's part I was going to use it for the intro, but then I just wanted to save it because I couldn't really figure out what it was, and like I came up with like a dark comedic mystery or thriller. I don't know, but I think it's definitely crossing over multiple genres. So I'm curious to know how you would define it.
I would say it's like a dark comedy, but like crime fiction, but a dark comedy. So I wanted to make it like a police book, where like basically they're idiots and they're not investigating a real crime. But they are investigating something. So it is, in some ways, like the structure of it is a crime novel, but it's, I think what I would really just describe it as dark humor, probably.
Yeah, like I was trying to imagine a movie or a TV show that had a very similar tone to it, and I couldn't really put my finger on it, but there were definitely times where, like, if you just think about Dumb and Dumber, and like 100%. what they go through in Dumb and Dumber, like. The tone of Dumb and Dumber is one of the most genius tones that would probably ever exist in movie. Like, I don't think I've ever seen somebody do it as well as they did it in that movie, because it's fucking hilarious, but you're also able to like feel the suspense and like really believe that they could die at the hands of these mobsters that are like coming after them, and like, and then they interweave these like wild parts, like the scene that Will was referencing earlier, that trip to Amherst, where Chloe, I think it's Chloe is her name, and Cleo. Yeah, so she's like in this random ass house with a professional wrestler or a semi-pro wrestler, and then they start doing the knife game. And then when he puts the knife through his fucking hand, like that to me rung like something out of Dumb and Dumber. But like if this were a TV show, which I think it could be, I don't think that it would necessarily have the exact same tone as Dumb and Dumber, but it would be similar to that with like a little bit of, I don't know, like fucking True Detective in it or something.
Mark, would you make this a TV show or a movie?
I think it would be better as a TV show. I mean, I wish I had had the ability to do that, but yeah, I think maybe as a TV show it would work good. But to your point, Greg, 100%. I think the easiest way I think to describe it is Dumb and Dumber meets Shutter Island. And so 100% Dumb and Dumber was in my head, because I mean, I obviously like the main character and his best friend, but they're idiots. Like they're not like crack detectives. They're not. It's not like Francois Perot coming to solve the case. It's like these two idiots, like drunk idiots. And so yeah, Dumb and Dumber was very much in my mind when I wrote it.
I love that was the inspiration for it. But,
It was, yeah.
if that's not a selling point, I don't really know what is. But with that, we kind of tossed this around because I think you had mentioned, and this is like a private text that we were talking about, where you kind of wrote this to a degree, like with a TV show or like a TV show style in mind, right?
Yeah, 100%.
Okay, cool. So with that, I thought it would be cool if we talked through, 5 or 6 of the main characters, and maybe we'll give the character's name. You give us just a little bit about who the character is, and then I'm curious to know who you would cast, like which actor or actress that you would cast in these roles. So let's start with the main character, and let's go with Matt Enos. Tell for the people listening who haven't read the book, just maybe like a quick, like who Matt Enos is, and then who you would cast in that role.
Can I ask a question before
One
you
more
answer
thing,
that?
King. Yeah.
One more thing, King. Would you say he's the main character?
I mean, on paper, who do you think the main character is?
Well, the epilogues from Rich's perspective.
Yeah.
True.
Yeah. I think it switches probably.
Okay.
I think Matthew probably is at the beginning. I think Matthew's making this is my take. I'm the person that wrote it, but my take is that Matthews is basically making the wrong decisions, and I think Rich ultimately makes the right decisions. I think they like reverse kind of paths. I don't know if you guys would agree with that.
For sure. Yeah, back to Will's question though.
Sure. Oh, so the main character or not the main character?
Or just go with the character.
Yeah. So he's
Lead
a cop. His dad was a cop. When he was young, he like showed promise as a baseball player. But once everybody else hit puberty and things like that, it just wasn't going to be in the cards for him. So he's a former athlete that is no longer an athlete. I wouldn't say he's the dumbest guy in the world, but he's certainly not the smartest. And I think he's a very good-natured person, despite maybe other flaws. So, am I supposed to say who I would cast now?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I actually was at a loss for this as I was writing and picturing in my head. But when you told me to come up with somebody for this, I actually think that Jesse Plemons, who's like in Breaking Bad, do you guys know who he is?
Yeah.
People call him like
he was in Friday Night Lights.
Bizarro Matt Damon.
I've never
He looks
heard
like Matt
that,
Damon, but he's not like Matt Damon. Do you know him? Have you watched
Todd.
Breaking Bad? Yes. Yeah. Todd from Breaking Bad.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
He's a very good actor, and I think he's like can kind of portray that like dumb athlete thing with also being like a good person. So that's my thought. What do you guys take on that?
Well, he's definitely out of shape enough now.
Jeez, leave the guy alone.
I like that. I think because to your point, Mark, he has kind of like a pretty versatile, film career as far as like the different roles that he's played. Yeah. So I think especially where this guy Matt is kind of you're especially if you're doing this as a TV show, he's probably going back and forth a little bit in time as to like different versions of himself, trying to come to cope with different scenarios that are going on. And so I think he'd be someone that could do this well. And then, unfortunately, to Greg's point, the out of shape former athlete, you could play off that pretty well.
Yeah, exactly. I think he would be, that would make it my ideal casting, I think, for him.
I think that's good too, because like, especially growing up in Dorchester specifically, but also just in Boston, in the surrounding area, he has that like he might kill you look if you say something the wrong way to him, like borderline psychopath that everybody that we grew up with has. So I really like that. I couldn't think of anybody for that character, so I think that's a really good one actually.
Yeah, he was also in Black Mass, so he plays the guy from Boston in Black Mass. But I think he could be my main.
Okay, so Jesse Plemons, I like that. Yeah. So your next character is someone that we just mentioned. I think it's Richie O'Connor. Is that the last name? Okay,
Matt's
so Richie O'Connor.
So he's Matt's best friend. He's hothead, gets into a lot of fights. He also happens to be married with a child. He's extremely immature, but he had a lot different upbringing than Matt had. So Matt grew up with a lot of safety and security, and Rich grew up with like basically the absence of parental figures in his life. So he's also a cop. So while him and Matt are similar in a lot of ways, they're also different in a lot of ways. I guess the person playing him would have to be able to convincingly be like a crazy person a little bit, while also being like at the end of the day a reliable friend. This one's probably you guys are probably not gonna like this. I actually think that Robert Pattinson could play him.
Okay.
He's in. All right. The reason I say this is, you guys have seen Uncut Gems, I'm guessing, right?
Yes.
Yeah. The Safdie brothers did another movie with him in it, which is very similar to Uncut Gems. It's also extremely stressful, but he plays like kind of like a scumbag drug dealer type guy, and he seemed to me like a guy like that you could see like waiting outside a train station or something. And so I actually think he's a great actor, and I think he could do a good job in this role. You guys are welcome to give me alternatives if you'd like.
I think the only other guy that I was thinking for this role, and I think he's just too young, is the fucking Nate Jacobs kid from Euphoria, who kind of is like a similar build to Robert Pattinson.
He kind of looks like Robert Pattinson, or he has like the same features as Robert Pattinson.
Oh yeah, actually, I think he'd be excellent. That's a good call, Greg.
All right, we've solved that one.
I just think he might be a little bit too young. I think Robert Pattinson is more
just
the age range
on him.
Yeah, I mean, he's probably actually like 29, so it's
That's
like I'm
true.
sure he could like grow a beard if he needed to. You know, he's just playing a high school kid right now, but that's a good one. I like that. Robert Pattinson is a guy that just like, this is kind of a side note. I need to watch more of his stuff. I've heard. I really think of him still as like I wrote him off for a little bit because of all like the Twilight stuff, and like not that Twilight was bad, but I just never got into it, so I just didn't really care. Then he was in Harry Potter, and like
Cedric.
you know he's in the he's in the new Batman, and I don't know. There's just too many Batmans. I kind of have my Batman at this point, like, but maybe I'll give it a shot.
Batman.
We'll
Mine's
see.
George Clooney.
Yeah, no, come on, man. It's Christopher Nolan trilogy. That's the Batman series, but. Okay, I like those picks. Let's go to the love interest of the novel. Let's go to Cleo Adams Karsh. Is that how you say her last name?
I guess so. I don't know. I just Googled last names and added that one.
That was gonna be one of my questions. How much fun did you have coming up with names? Because I know you're a big name guy.
I hate it. No, I hate it. It stinks. I don't know what to call anybody. And like I wanted the guys to be like very like local guys, so they can't have like interesting names. So everybody's name is like Mike or Matt or Rich or like.
It was really hard to follow.
I was gonna say that got confusing at a certain point, but yeah.
Yeah, a lot of people don't like that Matt's dad is named Mike. It's too confusing for them. I only have one point of reference for this person, but I think.
So give the character description first.
Oh yeah, I forgot. Okay, so she's like she's comes from money. She's distantly related to the Addams family, not that Addams family, like Sam, as in Sam Adams and John Quincy Adams. She's a distant relative of that family, so she grew up with money. Very different to the other characters in the book. She comes from a lot of privilege. Went to private school rather than public school. She might have done something to wrong Matt. He's not really sure. But a lot of the books from her perspective, she's not like an evil person, but she maybe made a mistake. So I was thinking, I don't know if you guys will know who this is by name, but Lily Collins, who plays Emily in Emily in Paris. Have you guys seen that?
I have seen Emily in Paris. Yeah, I know who you're talking about.
She's Phil Collins' daughter, as in like the musician Phil Collins.
Oh, okay.
But that would be my pick.
So why Emily in Paris? What about her?
I've never seen the show. I just think.
Okay.
I think
that's the only reference I've seen parts of the show.
I think physically she was what I was picturing in my head. That's literally my reasoning.
So for this one, this is the only one that I really feel like I kind of came up with. This is actually, I think for the Patty Enos character, I kind of have one, but it's a bit of a stretch. But for Cleo, I was thinking Kate Mara.
The redhead from
Rooney Mara's sister.
Yeah. Actually, I was thinking, absolutely. I was actually thinking Rooney Mara, but I think she's a little too old now.
Well, actually, it's funny. I just looked it up to make sure I knew the difference between the two.
No, I think either of the Mara
Kate
sisters
Mara
would be great.
Yeah.
Also, they're both actually billionaires from money, so maybe it'd be easy.
There
something
you go.
easy to tap
easy
into.
Play for them. For some reason, I was thinking of her in the first season of God, I can't remember the fucking name of it right
House
now.
of Cards.
House of Cards. And like that whole connection kind of like put me into like, okay, I could see this being her. She could come from money. Like she takes that whole trip to Amherst. Like, I don't know. It all just kind of fit the vibe, but that was somebody that came to mind for me.
Definitely.
What are your thoughts?
I'm down for either Mara sister.
Okay, I was thinking like far more. I mean, they're pretty famous, but I was thinking like more closer to A-listers.
Okay.
And I know Cleo. She's supposed to be really tall in the book, right?
I think so. Who knows?
So like, it was kind of hard for me not to just picture like the town as this book. So Blake Lively kind of came through my head.
Yeah,
like, as
definitely.
I was reading it. like I was literally picturing Blake Lively as I was reading the book. So I think
if you notice, sorry,
yeah, go ahead.
I'm just like completely talking over you. If you notice, I like don't give many physical descriptions of people. I think sometimes the authors go into like way too, like I don't need to know like every part of their nose looks like, or like I don't know. I don't know if you guys thought this was a positive or negative, but I like the reader to like form the person in their head. Did you guys thought there was too much absence of detail, or?
No, I liked it, man. I really enjoyed the book. You know, you sent it to me before you released it over the summertime, and I loved it. I was super excited for you to release it. I didn't know when you were going to release it, but I was able to form great pictures of characters in my mind, aside from the two white guys, the two main characters, because I was just like, kind of vacillating between all the different kids that we grew up with, which I think is what you were trying to go for, is like, there's little bits of all those kids in there. Yeah. But I think Blake Lively won, and then if I wasn't, because I was so focused on height, and then if I'm not focused on height, Natalie Portman.
Cheryl Swoops. Oh, sorry, Natalie Portman.
Natalie Portman.
Yeah, Natalie Portman was also great. Yeah.
She went to Harvard, so she like kind of understands the area a little bit, and she's just a fucking kick-ass actress. And I think like her performance in Black Swan and just like having that like super dark side in there, which in the book in her character can get really fucking dark in here. I think that she might be able to portray that.
Hell yeah, let's sign her up.
We're making the casting calls as we're going through this right now. Let's run through these last couple ones here. We got Mike Enos, Matt's dad. What do you got for that, Mark?
This was like the clearest one in my head. For whatever reason, I couldn't get it out of it. And I mean, obviously there's other things going on now. But Alec Baldwin was just like in my head, like constantly, like as I was like picturing him physically. So yeah, I think my pick would be Alec Baldwin.
Yeah, I mean, to Greg's point, I feel like sometimes, like when I sent this to you as like a potential thing for us to do on the show, I didn't realize until Greg pointed it out in my head before I even wrote anything down. I was just repurposing and recasting people from other Boston movies into these roles that I fit. But I could totally see that Alec Baldwin character fitting in here.
Yeah. What are you guys' thoughts?
I think Alec Baldwin's a pretty good call. I was once again having a hard time for this one not casting someone that we actually grew up with. Like there's so many dads in here that I feel like that we grew up with. If you were just like, hey, just fucking be yourself, that they could have done it, you know? And they would have been great at it.
You could have an authenticous casting.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, fucking is Slane old enough now to play a dad? I feel like he is.
Slane would be great.
That's actually not a bad idea. That's not a bad idea. All right, let's go to the star of the show here, because I feel like this could be a good one. Let's go to Monkey Bite, because I feel like I know Greg's got something. And I want to see what Mark has first. But I know Greg has something for this.
And you need Mark. You need to describe Monkey Bite right now.
Sure.
Best character I've read in a while.
He's technically not homeless, but you would think if you encountered him that he was a homeless person, or I don't know what you're supposed to, if that's politically incorrect, but I'm just going to use the term homeless person. But he's not. He actually lives with his mom. He's constantly getting kicked out of his mom's house. The main issue is that he's not a teenager. He's like close to 50 years old, but he's extremely irresponsible. He's like the only, I guess, true criminal, like in terms of like what you would consider normal crimes. He's like partial drug dealer, like partial thief. He's a construction worker technically, but it's unclear when he's actually if he's ever actually at work. He likes to drink. He likes to smoke cigarettes. Sometimes he passes out outside. He's maybe the least politically correct person you'd ever meet. Do you think that's pretty good?
Yeah,
I think that nails it.
Can you give me a quick little example of what Monkey Bite would sound like?
Oh,
you don't have to. You can't do that.
I like those big rear ends. Something like that. Something about a woman's ass, probably.
Yeah, I think
who would play this role?
That's one of the first things Monkey Bite actually says. He's like, I like the asses.
Yeah, so definitely. Who I think would play it now? this one, I know we keep referencing other Boston movies, but like obviously a similar character in an existing movie in The Fighter, Christian Bale plays Dickie Eklund, who's like kind of similar in certain ways. But I wouldn't just want to have him play the same person. This one's also a little out there. Extremely famous person, way too handsome. You'd have to do a lot of
ugly him up a little bit.
Ugly him up, but he's actually also in the new Batman. I don't know why I keep choosing people from Batman, but Colin Farrell actually I think could play him in Be Unhinged. But what are you guys' thoughts?
I really like Colin Farrell as that. This is not the answer, but like I kind of want to see what would happen if you asked him to play this role, and you guys are gonna be like, "What the fuck?" Paul Rudd.
Oh, that would be great.
Yeah, Paul Rudd, if you just like made him super fucking ugly, because like there is some sort of charm to Monkey Bite that I feel like Paul Rudd has. So if you were like, all right, Paul Rudd, like just imagine your life went wrong in all the right places, and now you are this guy. I feel like Paul Rudd could play it. Just scruff him up. He looks really good with scruff, and just switch up his hair, and he's got those eyes. Paul Rudd has really, really interesting eyes, which is why I think he's such a good actor. Like they're charming.
Yeah,
they're
that's
boyish.
What it is.
No, they are. They're charming. They're boyish, but like there's also like in the Avengers movies, like when he comes back and he's like looking for his family on the stones, like the panic that you see in his eyes, like he's very expressive with his eyes. So I think he could do a good job.
Yeah, okay. I actually 100% agree. Yeah.
That's outside the box. That's definitely outside the box. This one kind of just came to me as we're talking to this, and it'd have to be in the same way of like uglying up, some of the other ones that we talked about, or like changing the way you look. This guy you'd have to make older, but like I could see it working. It's like an older Pete Davidson.
Yeah.
I like that.
Like I think he's a little too young now. You have to like find a way to make it look a little older, but I feel like his general behavior could kind of fit into this. And like with some of his recent movies, he's making that somewhat transition to like funny guy who's like not trying to be funny, but he is funny. Yeah. Like, you know what I'm saying?
Here's my question about Pete Davidson though. Can Pete Davidson be anything where you're like, oh, that's not Pete Davidson, that's a character? Because I feel like every time I see Pete Davidson, I'm like, that's just Pete Davidson.
That's fair. I mean, that's his whole issue with SNL is he's only really useful when they are like, hey, Pete from Staten Island, what do you have for us? And he's just Pete and he's funny. So, I mean, that could potentially be a problem, but that's why I say older. So maybe he's made that transition more. I don't know. Depends when we make this.
Yeah.
Listen,
I'll call my agent.
Dude, we're hitting up Phil. Phil's reading the book right now. Shout out our boy Phil Keefe, also played Little League Baseball with us, which I want to talk about real quick. But Phil is going to be releasing a movie that's premiering in South by Southwest here in Austin, Texas in a couple weeks. They're called I Love My Dad. That's starring Patton Oswalt. And Phil believes in your talent. He's asked me multiple times how many movies I think you have in you. So he wants to make this happen. So
that'd be great. Fingers crossed, man.
We're gonna play this for him. He's gonna do his producer thing, and he's gonna get Natalie Portman. He's gonna get Paul Rudd. He's gonna get Alec Baldwin. And we're gonna make this fucking happen.
Oh, that'd be great. Thanks, guys. That's amazing, and he's been incredible. What he's done. Also, just a kid from Dorchester like us that's actually making waves in Hollywood. So. He actually broke my finger in baseball. We'll get to, as Greg said, we'll get to more baseball in a second, but I was not great at baseball. And at one point I just decided I wasn't going to swing. I just thought the chances of getting walked were a lot higher than the chances of me getting a hit. But Phil threw it inside and I just didn't move, and it snapped my middle finger.
A couple things real quick. One, I love that in the book you mentioned the Marlins, which Little League
which
team,
is a real team.
All three of us, it's a real team. All three of us were on there. Cedar Grove Little League champions, all right here presently on the podcast. So I was very happy to see that they were also in the championship in the book. And it's funny when you just talked about getting hit by a pitch. As I was reading the book, it made me think of something my mom used to make me do. She used to make me apologize to the people I hit when I was
pitching. There's also that one scene, because I reread that scene yesterday, where like it talks about the mom cheering too loudly for the character, and all I could think about was your mom, Will. Go William! Go William! It was just great. But also in that scene, so that is a fictionalized version of a real game and a real series that happened because we won the Little League World Series twice, and not like the Little League World Series, but like
no, very much smaller scale.
We were the champions, and there's that one play that I can proudly say I made that play in real life where the guy jumps and catches the ball at shortstop. That was a real play that happened. And there was one other thing, and
wait, was that the triple play?
No, that was Chris Kowalski hit a absolute rocket.
And we turned a triple play on it.
Did we get a triple play on it? I
was pitching and I was terrified because Chris Kowalski was huge. I remember this exact play.
Okay. I don't remember the triple play. I just remember jumping really high, catching the ball, and then like looking off to the right and seeing all like that. What I remember, there were like thousands of people at Ventura Park that day. And I just remember Lisa Del Tufo like jumping up and pantomiming the play that I just made. And I was like, Lisa Del Tufo thinks I'm cool. Like, hell yeah.
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
I mentioned I was really bad at baseball, but if people ask me if the Matt is me, I'm like, first thing I point to is like, no, you read the baseball part because he's like a star pitcher, and I was the worst player on every team I was ever on. So that's a clear dividing line between the fictional character and myself.
So there was one other thing that you and I didn't read the Amazon version. I was still reading through the file that you sent me.
Yeah.
So you mention in the book the copy that I have, the famous athletes, or for the people that have made it from our neighborhood into professional sports. I just wanted to like give you a minute to kind of like talk about that experience and how that kind of shaped that part of the book.
It was just like really horrible. I mean, horrible timing, horrible situation. But I had already finished the book, and there was a reference to Jimmy Hayes, who was a professional hockey player from Dorchester. We grew up with him. He was a star athlete. I mentioned him originally by name in the book, but I don't know if it was right or wrong. But I took it out because the book is called I Felt a Funeral. I didn't want it to be exploitive for Jimmy. I love Jimmy, love his family, great family. But I didn't want that part in the book because I didn't want people thinking like, or Mark is literally just adding this to the book to capitalize on like a tragedy. So I would love to put it back in the book, but I didn't want to offend anybody. So I removed it. I don't know. Like I said, I don't know if that's the right or wrong move, but yeah, he's a friend that we lost, and I don't want my book in any way to seem like I was taking advantage of that.
Yeah, I remember you reached out to me and you were like, should I keep this in? And I was like, I personally thought that you should, and then like write some sort of preface to the book or something like that. But I think that's also a good call. I didn't really think of it that way in terms of what the title actually is. But it's crazy for everyone out there listening. Like, we grew up in this town called Dorchester, and we had athletes from our neighborhood, all the same age, that ended up making it into the professional leagues. Like Jimmy and Kevin Hayes both ended up playing professional hockey. And then Michael Cox, who also played baseball with us and hockey with them, he ended up making it. And I think he started like a Monday Night Football game.
For the Giants. Yeah. Like they got tackled by Jared Allen.
Crazy. That is crazy. Yeah. And then, like, we mentioned Chris Kowalski earlier, but he was a great athlete who ended up playing 2 sports at Boston College. He played baseball and basketball. So we grew up with like all these kids that like really ended up doing big things in sports. And it was just like really interesting because growing up, they were just kids. They were just friends that we had. And then they ended up making it big, which is wild.
Yeah, and so I was bad at baseball, but to be fair to me, there was literally professional athletes I was facing. Yeah. If I was a few towns over, maybe I would have done a little bit better.
I think that's a good way to look at it. Is just remember who you were going up against here, and eventually what they became. But Mark, before we get you out of here, all of our loyal listeners, who we assume are all big time readers, can you please tell us, if they haven't already picked up I Felt a Funeral, why they should, and then where they can pick it up?
So I can definitely tell you where you can get it, because you can only get it one place. So I self-published the book, and the way I did that was through Amazon. So you can go on there. You don't need a Kindle. If you have an iPad or an Apple product, you can download the Kindle app. It's free. The book itself is $9.99. As I've described it, for the cost of 2 Bud Lights, you can have the book. Yeah, and you can just download it and read it on, any browser. You don't need a Kindle. I know a lot of the people that are reading it are not avid readers. So this is probably one of the selling points for the book, I think. A lot of people have told me, I don't like reading, but I liked reading your book. Now, maybe that's a bad sign for like it being literature. I would say it's certainly not literature, but it is a book. And I think I hope it mixes comedy along with like real tragedy and real sadness and real dark thoughts in a hopefully a good way. I definitely want to make you laugh. And all the feedback I've got so far is that it is very funny. So I hope you agree. I hope you buy it. Yeah. Do you guys want to add anything in that I'm forgetting?
One more thing, King. This is your time.
I honestly, dude, I think it's a great book. I'm excited. I know that you've mentioned you have kind of like seedlings for a sequel that I think would be really interesting
to
read.
Done.
Okay, there you go. So no more than just seedlings. It's sprouting right now. And like, I personally truly believe that it could be a TV show, like a limited series, like as I mentioned in our text thread, like sort of like The Night Of was for HBO without the Vaseline on the feet. And I think it would be really interesting to see that come to life. And I think if we really put our minds to it, I think we could actually make that happen. I'm not just saying that. I think we have the team to do it. It's great for everyone that's listening out there. If you made it an hour long into this podcast, it's really good. And I would go ahead and buy it. It's called I Felt the Funeral. If Mark's okay, maybe we can post some excerpts from it on Twitter, and then 100%. we'll be running this as a live interview probably tomorrow or next week or something like that. But it'll be available for you on Amazon. I Felt the Funeral, written by up and coming author Mark McDonough. Go check it out.
Not literature, but it is in fact a book. Go pick it up today on Amazon. Mark, we appreciate you joining us. We'll have you back on and keep those memes coming in the background. You guys may have seen we're dropping some new hot memes out there. That's courtesy of the crazy mind of Mark McDonough, the crazy beautiful mind, I should add, Mark McDonough. Greg, what are we going to hear here as we send the people out?
You are going to hear me reading an excerpt from the book in Monkey Bite's voice. And I don't know if I'm actually going to do that, but if you don't hear that, then you're going to hear music from my band down here in Austin, Texas, called Black Sheep Optimists.
Peace.
Thanks, guys.
Yo, I was dealt a decent hand. My pop's a decent man. No hate to the rat race, but the cheese I'm chasing's that way. See my plan, amazing grace. See reaching hands, appreciate these recent fans. Speak my peace, making memes like damn.